Okay, let's get going. So thank you all for being on time. I super appreciate that. I'm really excited for you all to be here and to learn about YEF, the Youth Empowerment Fund. My name is Wahid Ahmed. I'm our Community Engagement Coordinator. You'll learn more about me through this webinar, but today you're going to learn a lot about YEF's programs and our impact. So I'm excited for you all to get to learn a little bit more. Um, So the purpose of this webinar is to give you all some insight on how to support a group of young people in making a super strong mini grant proposal. And so we're going to do that through a couple of ways. First of all, we're going to give you an overall overview of YEF and our mission so that you have some context into us and kind of how we function and how we tick. I'm going to give you guys an explanation of what a mini grant is, especially in a way that is youth friendly and one that youth can digest easily. I'm going to give you some questions to ask before applying, so some tips and tricks to think about when you're supporting and guiding your young people through the application process. I'm going to further contextualize our mini grants and our mini grantees by showing you guys different types of funding and project examples. And then I want to give you guys a timetable as well because dates are important. At the end of that, I'm going to give other funding resources besides the Youth Empowerment Fund for youth-led projects. So that being said, let's get into the meat of this presentation. So YEF has a youth-led, adult-supported model of work. We have four tenets, so supporting youth leadership, strengthening our communities, activating youth-led change, and amplifying youth voice. And we do that through two of our programs. So with our community funder program, we strive to support youth leadership and strengthen communities. Our community funders are hired on as part-time youth staff, and they're essentially the lifeblood of YEF. They're responsible for the dissemination of our mini grants. They're also tasked with co-facilitating programming, doing independent outreach, and youth-led workshops as well. And so we seek to activate youth-led change and amplifying youth voice through our mini grant program. Our mini grant program really allows us to broaden our reach within San Francisco and provides funding for youth-led initiatives and programming with funding offered in 3 different cycles throughout the year. Okay. So I want to give you guys some more context into the YEF staff. So I know I told you that we have community funders who are part-time teen staff, but there's a little bit more going on behind the scenes. So there's our YEF director, Brianne Harris. She's my supervisor. She is your go-to if you want to do formalized partnerships or collaboration with YEF, big picture things. She's a great resource for that. There's myself, the community engagement specialist. I handle all of YEF's outreach, our online presence, and I also handle the fiscal operations for our mini grants. And then, like I said, we have our community funders, our very excitable youth staff. I wanted to highlight some past grantees that we've had because I think it's a really good context for you all to have. These are 2 very diverse, very different projects from one another, and so I wanted to highlight the diversity that YEF has in our funding. So the first project is Silk Road Davka. In that project, young people taught and learned traditional Arab dancing to their peers. The project actually ended with the young people in that project making a community dance showcase with youth choreographed dances. And that's the project at the bottom left corner. And then the top corner, Gardening and Agriculture, which was a project from youth from the West Bay Filipino Multi-Services Center. So in that project, youth in the Soma wanted to address the lack of green space and healthy food options in their neighborhood. So they built a community garden with other youth from their neighborhood. The produce that came from their garden was actually used to model healthy cooking for people in the neighborhood as well. So that's just to give you all an example of what YEF has funded in the past. And I wanted to give you guys some sort of like qualitative data about the impact that YEF has on young people individually. So this quote here is from a youth leader who had a grant with us in the past. Her name is Gigi. She says, "The best part about this project is being able to have a vision of something, then see it come to life before you." And that's really the goal for YEF and our mini grants. We want to see people, our young people, take the initiative, really see a project from fruition to completion, and get to experience the real satisfaction that comes from project-based learning. So now that you all have some context about YEF and our mini grantees, I want to get into kind of the nitty-gritty about the mini grants and what they require. So again, your young people will probably ask you, what is a mini grant? Our mini grants give opportunities for young people to experience project-based learning. So they fund youth-led initiated, they fund youth-initiated and youth-led projects throughout the city. And our mini grants actually offer a substantial support for youth-led projects, as we fund up to $10,000 for their initiatives. So young people really have the chance to make a really quality project with that sum of money. And so now that you guys have some insight into mini grants, let's talk more about the requirements for them, because a lot of people have questions about them. So I wanted to give you all a chance to get really clear on them. So first and foremost, mini grants must be created and led by youth under 18. We really want to make sure that young people are at the forefront at the thought and the execution of these projects. That being said, we do require at least one official supporter to assist the youth throughout the project. Young people doing these projects, a lot of them are doing it for the first time and building these skills for the first time, and so they definitely need an adult to support them throughout that process. Also, super important, projects also have to have a fiscal sponsor of a 501c3 nonprofit sign on to support the projects. Furthermore, we require that projects have a budget within the cycle range, and I'll talk more about the different ranges of our grants in a minute. Super importantly is that our funding is allocated so that projects must be in San Francisco in 4 cities. So projects must be taking place in San Francisco. And lastly, all grantees must attend an orientation about managing their grant. I think some people think that the orientation isn't a super important part of the grant process, but it's actually the point in time where you get a lot of information about how to handle your grant. And that is information for the young people and the adult support as well. And I wanted to give you guys a chance, or I wanted to expand more about the role that adult supporters have, because it's actually really critical. So like I said, it's a requirement of the grant, and adults sign on to support the project for the entirety of the grant cycle. So we also expect adults, adult support to volunteer their time to help the youth with their projects, because our grants don't pay for adult wages. I should also say that adult staff serve as the main point of contact with YEF during the project cycle. So should you guys get funded, we'd be in contact a lot. And then on the topic of fiscal sponsors, I know a lot of people have questions about them and aren't really clear about what that role is. And so I wanted to really dig into that now. So like I said, they're a really strong requirement for all the mini grants, and they must be a tax-exempt 501c3. And so fiscal sponsors agree to sign a memorandum of understanding that outlines YEF's guidelines for the mini grant cycle. And then perhaps most importantly, and often misunderstood, is that fiscal sponsors are responsible for funding the cost of the mini grant project. So YEF will reimburse fiscal sponsors monthly, as long as fiscal sponsors produce monthly invoices detailing the project expenses throughout the cycle. And so a lot of people are really unclear about the role that fiscal sponsors play. And they think that it's just like technical assistance, but it's actually a substantial amount of fiscal assistance as well. So let's talk more about the mini grant cycles, get into some fun stuff. And I know the dates are super important for you all. So we have 3 funding cycles: school year, spring, summer. During the school year, we expect projects to run from October until May, so it's a long time. And we grant up to $10,000 to make sure that there's enough funding allocated for you to be able to do a project for the entire school year. The applications for the school year cycle are accepted on the first Friday of September, so pretty soon. The next cycle is the spring cycle. Projects are set to run from January through June. during the spring, and we grant up to $5,000 for those as well. Those are due the first Friday in November. And then we have our summer cycle, and projects are expected to run from June until August, and we grant up to $2,500 for that. Those applications are due the first Friday in April. For people doing first-time projects, a lot of them will go for the spring or summer cycles because they are smaller, they're not as long. The summer cycle is a great chance for young people who are kind of just now stepping into youth leadership roles. It gives them a more controlled timeline, and it's kind of more scaffolded learning for them. And then I want to talk about the outcomes that we're really looking for in our mini grants. So the main outcome is that we expect from our grantees to address a specific youth need and interest. So we're not expecting for our grantees to solve a huge social issue, but we want them to address the needs and interests of a specific community. So that can mean creating a photography club to make the arts more accessible, or creating a series of events in a neighborhood to build community and have fun. Other outcomes that we look for include youth having authentic ownership over the programming and really getting to drive it, and also building confidence that really is unique to project-based learning. All right. So questions to ask before applying. Your young people probably won't ask these questions, so you probably should. They're a really great tool to keep your young people focused while they're writing the application. The first question is, does this project meet a youth need? And so again, your group can interpret need how they see fit, but this is a good guiding question to narrow down and really center the purpose of your grant and what your youth are trying to achieve with it. The next question is, are you asking for a realistic amount of money? So using this question is a great way to guide your young people through the application and budget, and it results in a really good attention to detail that really shines through the application. And the last question is, would this project be possible without funding? So again, posing the question to your youth group will help them articulate their project's urgency and the necessity for it while they're writing the application. So now that we talked about the guidelines for applying, I want to give you some insight into the main categories that our grantees really fall into. So the types of projects that we fund, long-term projects that includes club, youth-led organizing, youth-led workshops and series. Those usually happen throughout like our school year cycle. We also fund one-time event youth summits, showcases. We fund project support, so things that'll help your project go from the next level. So for example, a video camera that's of a higher quality for a youth filmmaking group. We also fund summer activities. So again, like a safe and supportive environment and activity for young people to do in the summer months when some programming isn't as available. And I want to give you guys some examples of mini grant projects. So these are recent examples. So this project is called International Voices. It was actually made from students at International High School. A lot of them are actually newcomers to the country. And the youth built and ran a music studio in their school because they wanted to encourage their peers to express themselves in their native languages and collaborate across like race, class, ethnic, and national differences. The George Washington High School Bike Club was a lot of fun. Youth ran a bike riding and repair class for students at their school, and they also organized group bike rides throughout the sunset. And the last project I want to highlight for you guys is called Freaking Out the Neighborhood. So in this project, youth created a web series and learned all about the aspects of show producing. They wrote the series, they directed it, edited it, they hired actors, paid the actors. So it was a great experience for them as well. And then I'm gonna go over some frequently asked questions that I get a lot actually, and so I wanted to just have them, to front load them for you guys. So who can you contact with more questions? The answer is me, Community Engagement Specialist. My name is Wahid. My email is wahmed@ymcasf.org. A big question is there anything that YEF cannot fund? The short answer is yes, but I'm gonna go into the nitty gritty of that. So we cannot fund adult staff wages. We can only fund like youth wages. We cannot fund administrative fees. So some fiscal sponsors will ask to be reimbursed for their administrative time, so for their invoicing, but that would have to be something donated kind of in kind to your project because YEF can't reimburse for that. We cannot fund travel expenses outside of San Francisco. So any plane tickets or things like that, or conferences, unfortunately, that wouldn't be able to be funded by YEF. We can't fund gratuity or tip. So a lot of grantees, as a way to celebrate, will like go out for like a big dinner or their last day of the program, and we'll use YEF funds to do that. We make sure to tell them though that there needs to be some type of petty cash or something on hand because YEF can't fund the tip for that. And then as a part of the San Francisco tax code, we can't fund bottled water as well. A really important question is whether or not transitional age youth can take part in a mini grant. And it's a nuanced question, so I want to give it some real space. So can take part of a mini grant as participants and get stipends, but they cannot be the main youth leader for the project. Also, staff members cannot receive any funds from the mini grant projects. A lot of people want to know when they find out about when they'll be funded. It takes about 1 month for us to make a funding decision. Shortly before that, we'll be in contact. But yeah, about 1 month is a range. And then where else can I get funded? So there are other organizations that YEF actually partners with that are great resources for young people that want to do mini grant projects. So the Youth Leadership Institute's program called Bling offers mini grants, as well as Chalk's Youth Funding Youth Ideas. I don't have the dates for those, but I believe that they're a similar timeline to YEF. Then moving forward, I want to thank you all for being here, us and our new community funder group. I want to say that if you want to follow us or engage with us more, feel free to please follow us actually on social media. You can also reach out to me. My email is here. So yeah, I guess if anybody has any questions, feel free.
Hi.
Hi.
This is Eric. You are Wahid, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, excellent. Well, nice to meet you over the phone.
Likewise.
This sounds like a great opportunity. This is definitely something that I'm looking forward to, and I will be applying for this.
That's great to hear.
Yeah. And I've actually worked with SF International very closely.
Oh, that's exciting.
Because one of our projects is basically working with other high schools. And I did have a question. Let me look at my screenshot. Give me a second.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry. I'm not sure.
Hey, did you put shorter?
Oh, okay. And so basically, if we were to apply like the program, the funding would be available from October, right? October till May.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That was my only question actually.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Wahid, it's
Hey,
Cliff.
Cliff.
Hey, thanks so much for having us. My question is, I just happened to notice very specifically that it says the grant does not fund adult staff wages. So given language, I'm curious if that also impacts like stipends for adults.
So if adults are, I want to make sure that I'm answering your question properly. Are you saying like adults who are transitional age youth or?
I am thinking, so for example, my summer program, I hire a temporary staff person. So there are times where I might be paying someone an adult staff wage, but I also am cognizant of the fact that sometimes there could be stipends even for adults, and I wonder if they are above TAY, right? Because TAY goes to 24. I'm just kind of curious about stipends as far as short-term work for an adult who's over 24.
Got you. Thank you for your question. I'm actually going to hand that off to our director, Brianne Harris.
I have the answer for you. Generally, any work that the fiscal sponsor is already doing, any people they're already hiring, we do not pay for any of that stuff.
Okay.
If it is a usual thing that you would hire on an intern, and that's generally something that your organization commits to annually, that would not be something that we, would be able to pay for, because that person would be doing things other than working
Yep.
with the program.
Yep.
The instance in which adult honorariums can be paid is if they are doing a service that would be like a one-time or like a very short-term situation. So examples would be a DJ, a photographer,
Okay.
Maybe a dance teacher that's not already employed with the organization that the kids want to bring in to run a couple dance classes. So we can provide funding for adult support, but they cannot be linked to the fiscal sponsor. So it's meant to be not supplemental for sort of the funding that the fiscal sponsor might be trying to support.
Yep, makes complete sense. Thank you for that clarification.
No problem.
And then I did want to also point out that my email on this last slide is wrong. So my email is wahmed, ahmed@ymcasf.org. Yeah, thank you both for attending. I super appreciate you guys taking the time out to talk to YEF some and learn more about our programs. Are there any more questions you both have?
Yeah, I actually do. I know that Bling has students doing interviews and deciding who gets the funding. So what does your process look like? How do you choose who gets the funding?
Yeah, so who gets the funding is up to our youth staff, the community funders. We don't really influence their decisions at all, but we do a consensus-based model of to come to our grant decisions. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And if it's a let me try to rack my brain on the question. So if it's a civic engagement project that, for example, like my youth have previously delivered, they can still apply to this because it's not something that is currently funded by YEF, right? It's really like an extension of a civic engagement project that they have already completed.
Yeah, and I think that would fall under the category of like project support, so taking a project to the next level.
Great, great. Okay. I don't think I have any other questions.
Okay. Any questions, Eric?
Sorry. No, I'm good.
Okay. Well, thank you both so much. Have a great night or a great day, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thanks, Wahid.
Thank you, Wahid. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
And then I just do end meeting, right? Oh my God. Yeah.